So number one says ask the user for any number and then store that in a variable, and then ask the user for the name and then store that in a variable, and then the third variable multiply their name by the number that they inputted. So first, to ask the user for a number, we have to print like give me a number, and then after that we have to store that input in a variable, and we have to make it an integer, and then we have to print like give me your name, and then we store their name in a variable, and then we can make like a third variable and then multiply their name by that number. And if we print that number, or if we print the letter Z, then we'll print their name times the number. So if I run that, so if I said like 4, and you said my name, then it prints my name 4 times. Okay, so for number 2, it says ask the user for any number and store it in a variable, and then ask the user for another number and then store that in a variable, and then create a third variable that multiplies the first and second number. So first we ask them for a number, so print give me a number. We can store that in a variable. So then we can ask them for another number. Call that num2. And then we can make another variable that multiplies the 2. And then we just print it like that. And then if we run it, it'll ask you for a number. Say we give like 4, and then we give 5. It should give 20. Yeah. For number 3, it says ask the user to store a number in a variable. If that number is greater than 10, print your number is greater than 10. If it's equal to 10, print your number is equal to 10. And if your number is less than 10, print your number is less than 10. So we have to print give me a number again. And then we can store that number in a variable. So call it num equals float, and then input. And then we say if num is greater than 10, we print your number is greater than 10. If it's less than 10, we say elif, and then num less than 10, we print your number is less than 10. And then if it's equal, we can just say else, and then say print your number is equal to 10. So if I run that, it says give me a number. So it says 14, and then it says your number is greater than 10. For number 4, it says create a variable that has a value of 5 and print that variable. So we can just call the variable like x, and we'll say it equals 5, and then we just print x, and then it'll print 5. And then for number 5, ask the user for any number and store that in a variable. If that number is equal to 5, print your number is equal to 5, and if it's not, print it's not equal to 5. So say print if a number, and make that give it an input variable. So we have to make it a float. Then I have to say if okay, so if num equals 5, and we say print your number is equal to 5, and else is not equal to and it shows your number. Your number is equal to 5. Okay, I'll go over the lesson now. You guys have any questions on that homework? Okay, I'll go through this. So today we're just going to go over importing modules and the for loop. So the modules we're going to learn about are the time and random modules. So to import a module, we have to do it at like the very top of our code. So to import time, we write import and then time. So here we did on the first one, we just said import time. So time is basically used to just like make the computer wait a couple seconds, however you want. So we have to just say time dot sleep, and then in parentheses, the amount of seconds you want the computer to wait. So if we said import time, and then say print hello, and then said time dot sleep 10, the computer waits 10 seconds and then prints bye. So if I did here, if I said import time, and then said print hi, and then if I use the sleep function, so time dot sleep, and then if we did like 4, and then print bye, the computer would wait 4 seconds and then print bye. So and then it waited 4 seconds and then printed bye. The next module is the random module. So we just type import random at the top of our code. So we can choose a number. So say we wanted to choose a random choice of like some options. If we wanted to find a random number between 0 and 1, we can use the random function. So here we said import random, and then we made a variable called random. And if we printed random, we get a random number which between 0 and 1. So yeah. And then we can also use random for like creating a random number between like a certain range. So if we said random and then dot random and then a comma b, which are 2 numbers, it'll get a random number between those 2 numbers. So say we said import random, and then random number equals random dot random 1 comma 30. Then it will print a number between 1 and 30. So the computer just chose 19 because that was between 1 and 30. So if we wanted to choose like a random element or letter in a string or a list, we can use the random dot choice string or list function. So a list is like it's in square brackets, and then it has values inside it separated by commas. We'll go over that next class. So if we said import random and then said random element equals random dot choice welcome, and then we printed that random element, we get an output of L. So random dot choice is like a random letter from that string. So if we wanted to shuffle the contents in a list, we can say random dot shuffle and then put the list inside there. So we're not going to go over a list today. We'll go over that in next class. So if we said import random, and then so we said numbers equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now this is a list, by the way. You put it in between the square bracket and then separated by commas. So if we said random dot shuffle numbers, so in numbers we store a list, right? So if we shuffle it and then print numbers, we'll get a random. It will just shuffle it. So here it says 6, 2, 5, 3, 7, 10, 4, 1, 8, 9. One was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions on like import time and import random? Okay. So we'll go into the for loop. So the for loop allows like a code to be executed repeatedly over like a certain amount of times. So say we wanted to like ring a bell 3 times. You wouldn't have to use like 3 different lines. You can just use a for loop with like 2 lines. So for the syntax, we would say for like any variable in range, and then we have in parentheses our start number, our stop number, and our step number, and then we say a statement here. So for example, if we just say like 4, and then we have a variable here, and then we type in range, and then we can have like a stop number, a start number, and a step number, and then we can like print 5. So say we wanted to do that like 4 times, then we print 5, 5, 5, 5 4 times. So the start number is just the number you start on. The stopping number, the loop stops the variable when the variable reaches this number. So the loop, say we put a stop number at 5, the loop repeats 5 times. And then step is how much the variable increased by. So this variable over here, that's a loop variable or a counter variable that like every time one loop is completed, this variable gets added by the step. So for example, if we wanted to print the word hello 3 times, we'd say 4, and then we put any loop variable here. So we put word in range, and then we started at 0, and then 3, 1, and then we printed hello, and then that prints hello 3 times. So just try that in your editor. And tell me when you finish trying that out. Did you guys finish trying it out?
So I tried writing the code, but then in the terminal it gave not a terminal, but it gave me an error. Basically, it said process finish with exit code 13137 interrupted by signal something.
Or can you share your screen? Wait, are you using it like a Mac?
Yes.
Okay. Also, you see the word range? You have to put a space between the. Yeah. Okay. 1 second. I think there's like a different print statement you have to use in the Mac. Okay. I'll get back to that when I find it. I think you have to do print and then underscore raw on Mac. I'm not sure. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So if you printed the counter variable on the for loop, so say we did for loop in range 1, 11, 1, and then printed loop, it'll print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because this variable loop, we started at 1, and then each time the loop is over, it'll increase by 1. So say it starts at 1, and then we print loop, it'll print 1, And then after that's over, it will get added by 1, and then it will print 2, and then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. But say we did 1 comma 11 comma 2, it'll print only 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 because we put 2 over here. So each time the loop is over, the loop variable gets added by 2. So say it started at 1. So if we go from 1, it'll print 1, and then after that's over, it'll print no, it will add this loop by 2. So then it'll print 3, and then it'll add 2 again, and then print 5, and then add 2, 7, and then add 2, and then 9. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on the for loop? Okay, so we're just gonna go over some practice problems in class. We'll go one by one. So try to wait. Let me put a link to this presentation in the Google Classroom. Okay, I added the presentation to the Google Classroom, so you guys can check over that when you go over the problems. So we're gonna go one by one, and then I'll explain the answer for each of them. So try to print a random number between 1 and 100 using the random module. Okay, let me show you guys the answer to that. So first we had to import random, and then we had to make a variable called random, or we called it num, and then we said random dot randint equals no, in parentheses 1 comma 100, because random dot randint gets a random number between 1 and 100, and then we just print that variable. Okay, so next question.
Can I just a quick question, if you don't mind, Ms. Anish. So now, number one, is it import random? Maybe I missed, but did you have a chance to explain the import function?
Yeah, that was I think the first slide. So we just say import and then
Oh, okay.
module.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So did everyone understand what import function is doing? Paul?
I think I do. I just wrote it down a few times. I think it gave me an error because I think Mr. Anish told me that the code was different for Macs or
Yeah, on the
Mac.
Mac, I think on some Macs the print statement is different.
Okay. Yeah, and so how are you, I mean, how about Ezra and Joseph? Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's okay for me.
Okay, that's great. All right, thank you. Yeah, please move on.
Okay, I'll move on to the next problem. So choose a random element in the string. What are you doing? That element could be a space or a letter. So I use the random dot choice function. Show you guys the answer. Paul, you did it properly when I saw it. It was just like the Mac. It didn't like know what the print statement was. So here's the answer. We import random first, and then we make a variable. I called it random element. And then we used random dot choice, and then we said, what are you doing? And then we print random element. So the random dot choice function, remember, it gets any element from here. So an element can be like any letter or a space too. Okay, so for number 3, print the word hello 4 times using a for loop, but print each word 2 seconds apart. So you have to use the random, or no, not the random function, the time function, or the time module, to be able to print each word 2 seconds apart. So use a for loop and print hello 4 times, but wait 2 seconds before printing each word. Now you guys can look over the presentation if you want. I put in the Google Classroom. Yeah, I'll go over the answer for it. So first we have to import time, and then we have to do a for loop starting at 0 and then ending at 4. So we print hello 4 times, and then to put a space or break like for 2 seconds in between each print, we say time.sleep and then 2. So we print hello and then waits 2 seconds, and then we print hello again and then waits another 2 seconds, and does that 4 times. So number 4, print random numbers in between 1 and 10 5 times using a for loop. So do a for loop on random.random 1, 10, and remember to import random. Okay, I'll go over the answer for that. So first we need import random, and then we have to do a for loop from starting at 0 and then ending at 5. So we repeat it 5 times, and then we print a random number between 1 and 10. So we do random.random 1, 10. So we print a different number, or it could be the same, but we print a different number 5 times. Okay, next one, ask the user for any positive integer, and then print a random number in between 1 and their number. So store their integer in a variable, and then do a random.random 1, whatever that variable name is. Okay, I'll go over the answer. So first we need import random. So we said we need asking for a positive integer, so say please give me an integer, and then we store that in a variable called num, and then call that integer, and then say input, because we don't want that to be a string. And then we make a variable called random number, and then we say random.random. So we wanted to find an integer between 1 and their number, so we say 1, and then comma number, because it's in between 1 and their input. So now random number stores that number in between 1 and their number, and then we just print random number. Okay, so ask the user for any word, and then store that in a variable, and then ask the user how many times they want that word to be repeated, and then store that in a variable, and then print the user's word how many times they want it to be repeated. So we first need to ask them to store it in a variable. So store their word in a variable, and then we need to ask them how many times they want it to be repeated. So we need to store that number in another variable, and we need to convert that input into an integer. and then print the user's word how many times they wanted it repeated. So do a for loop, and then do 0 comma that number that you stored that the user inputted, and then comma 1, and then print that word. Okay, I'll go over the answer. So we have to print give me a word, and then we store that word as an input, and then we ask them how many times they want that word to be repeated. So I created a variable called repeat, and then store that in an integer input because we're asking them for a number. And then we say for loop in range 0 comma repeat because that's how many times we want that word to be repeated. So say it was like 4, we say 0, and then repeat, which would be 4, and then comma 1, and then we print word, which was their input. Okay, so all the answers here. Just try this out. So print your name 50 times using a for loop. So just try writing this code down in your terminal. Not your terminal, your editor. Okay, I'll go over the answer for this one. So we do for loop in range, and then 1 comma 51 comma 1, and then if we wanted to print each number next to the name, so say we put your name here, so we say print and then name comma loop, so it will print your name and then 1 and then name 2 and then name 3 all the way till 50. So yeah, that's it for today's class.